All right, welcome back. Right now it's time for the second presentation of today's evening. So please welcome on stage Vojtech Horanek from IT.
Hi, so my name is Vojta, and today I'll be talking about the possibilities of Kotlin full stack development. Just a heads up, my background is in mobile development, so the backend part is going to be limited. It's not going to be as full as the talk before me. So just that we can establish what full stack development really means. In simple terms, there's usually a front end, which is the user interface. It could be a web, mobile, or a desktop app. And then there's the backend, which offers some kind of an interface, REST or SOAP API, and usually communicates with a database or other services. So what about Kotlin? What does Kotlin offer? Well, it offers it all. Currently, you can make beautiful front ends in Compose multi-platform. I'll talk about it later. And for backend, you can use Spring, as was said before me, or more natively to Kotlin, you can use Ktor, which can be even used in a Kotlin native context without the need for a JVM runtime. And then for database connection, you can use SQLite or Exposed, and you can connect to different other services. For example, use the Firebase admin SDK to connect to like a Firebase project. So Compose, currently it offers, it supports a variety of targets. Production use is ready for Android and desktop. I'm just gonna have a quick question. Which of you use the JetBrains Toolbox app? Yeah, that one is made in Compose. Then it's in beta for iOS, but I think it's already usable, although there can be some API changes. And then for web, it's in alpha. Now, there are two different interesting variants for web. First one uses Kotlin WebAssembly, which renders a web page on a canvas, and you can run your Compose application without mostly any changes to the code and just deploy it inside a web browser. And then there is a separate library called Compose HTML, which uses Kotlin JS backend. And it basically generates a web page using Compose-like syntax, but there's a lot of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript similarities, and it can be really noticed. As can be seen here, this is a snippet of code for in Compose HTML, and as you can see, it almost looks like HTML converted to Kotlin. For those of you that use Compose, you wouldn't really say that this is Compose. However, we can improve this with the use of a library called Kobweb. As the author says, Kobweb is an opinionated Kotlin framework for creating websites and web apps built on top of Compose HTML, inspired by Next.js and Chakra UI. And what it can do for us is transform the code to a much more Compose-looking code. As you can see, there are the familiar widgets or layouts like box, column, row. You can use modifiers, which do not exist in the Compose HTML. But it doesn't transfer the code completely, and it's still not same as running Compose using the WebAssembly. So you can still notice references to HTML. For example, font size is set via modifier with pixels, or there are some color changes or changes to how color works, or for example, you can see the reference here, which also doesn't exist in normal Compose. But I think the syntax is much nicer and it's much straightforward for a Compose developer to pick up on this. So what else does Kobweb offer? It offers road handling, so the navigation between pages. Normally in Compose HTML you would have to implement it yourself, but Kobweb does that for you. As you've seen, there are a lot of useful widgets, and then there's a sub-library of Kobweb called Silk, where a lot of styled and nice widgets are ready to be used. Kobweb also offers a command line tool, which can support your development with live reloading. It does static site exporting, so for deployment. It supports responsive design, and there's an interesting feature where you can generate pages from Markdown. There's some custom syntax, and there's a lot to it, but it can be useful, for example, when there's a lot of content and you wouldn't want to program it in standard Compose. So you just write it in Markdown and it gets exported as a nice page. And it even supports full stack development, where you can define some API roads, but this is not the focus of today's talk, but you can explore it yourself. Just there's the option. So what is the second piece of the puzzle? Well, as I've said, it's Ktor. That's a framework for building asynchronous server-side and client-side applications. It's built from the ground up using Kotlin, and you can leverage all the features you love from Kotlin, for example, coroutines or KMP, multi-platform support. So for backend development, it standardly offers request handling, routing, serving static content, and it's extensible via a lot of plugins. Some standard ones are for content negotiation, so like serialization, authentication, authorization, support for sessions, WebSockets, and you can create your own plugins. For example, for Firebase login, which is a useful use case, you can extend, you can create your own auth provider that contacts Firebase authentication. So where can we leverage Kotlin multi-platform in this context, which this is the main point of the talk, really? We can share a lot of things. So there will be less code duplication, and the classes that you use to interact between front-end and back-end can be shared. As you can see on the simple diagram, we have a shared module which contains classes or some interfaces which you might want to share between the backend and frontend. This is compiled as a Kotlin multi-platform module. Then on the frontend, we have some front-end shared module which accesses this global shared module, let's say, and some feature modules. Now, there's also a second kind of sharing, and that's between different front ends. So for example, if you have a Kobweb application, you can access the different feature modules and the shared module of the front-end module to share the whole like business and the domain layer with a different front end. So when implementing, let's say two front ends, two different like applications, you can only write the whole domain layer only once. And on the back end, this is marked as a JVM, but you can really use KMP here as well. It doesn't matter. That's really up to you if you want to have maybe different backends, experiment with something different than Ktor or even the Ktor in the Kotlin native context. And it goes the same as in the front end, basically. So I'll just show you a practical demonstration of an application that was created in this way. I made this as a part of my bachelor thesis, and so it's not perfect, but it's already being used, and it proved quite good. The project is called Century. It's a platform for managing strings in projects. It's all written in Kotlin. Even this front end basically uses Kobweb, and you can see it looks like any other native web page. I'm just going to show you a few interactions so you can see how it works. I don't think a normal user would recognize this from any other web page. Basically, it's just HTML. There's nothing special to it. We can look at the code now. Sorry, I'll just zoom in. Is it visible? Yeah. So first I'll show you the front end. Here's the entry point to Kobweb. Basically, you set your styling here, and then Kobweb provides you with this content lambda, which is then used for routing. The different pages are normal composable functions annotated with a page annotation that is provided by Ktor and makes this composable a routable page, basically. And here you can write normal compose, almost normal compose. Of course, it's still Compose HTML, so you have to manage things a little bit differently, but for a Compose developer, this should look pretty familiar. For example, here there's some gap modifier, which is specific to Kobweb because it uses flex layout under the hood. But other than that, to me, it looks very Compose native, I would say. I've prepared a button here, so you can see how you can style the widgets differently. It's also different from normal Compose, but you can set CSS variables using modifiers, which then the button composable, which is provided from Kobweb, uses. And this way you can customize the widgets. This one is from Silk. This is the sub-library from Kobweb. Yeah. What you also need to handle differently, I think Compose is very good in animations, but in Compose HTML, you have to use CSS animations. So this is kind of a wrapper around what you would write in CSS, basically. All right, and now for the backend side. This basically uses the standard Ktor application. It's very simple. It uses type-safe routing, so you can define your roads in a kind of hierarchical way, basically, and you can access the different arguments of the endpoint call safely, type safely. I'm saying. And then the road is defined like this, where you pass in the resource you want to respond to, and in the body you basically execute your calls or whatever you need to do. As you can see, it's a suspendable function, so you can use coroutines here. Also, what I wanted to mention is that Ktor itself doesn't provide any dependency injection framework, so you have to use something else. For example, here, Coin is used, which integrates really well with Ktor. It has its own plugin, and you can inject based on even like different calls, so you can get a call context that would be like similar to how Spring works. And now I can show you the interesting part. This use case, which is called here, just returns some kind of a product class. Now this product class is shared between the front end and the back end. So if I just, if I just show you, we are in a shared module inside the common main source set, where all of the data classes that are shared between front end and back end are located. And now if we look at the receiving end, this is where the front end receives or calls the API, and you can see that it also maps the result to the project from the shared module. So this is the only class that is used in between of those in this communication. Now, I also wanted to show you how integration with other services could work. This project runs on Firebase only. There are some limitations, but I'm not going to talk about that. Basically, how it works, the backend has some kind of an interface, which is then implemented in a totally separate module, this module Firebase, and it's used to access the Firestore in this case. So it is also totally separate, and if you would ever need, you could replace it with some maybe local database or anything else. Yeah, and that's pretty much all I wanted to cover here. So your turn to the presentation. Yeah, so I wanted to mention that the tools are here. They are pretty ready for at least small projects. Maybe not some big and scalable projects, but they are here. And it's fun to play with, so you should start building. There's one more thing. This whole presentation was written in Compose, and it is running in a web browser. Thank you. So I'll just read the questions now. How do people react when they hear Ktor during recruiting process? I'm not sure how to answer that because I've been part of maybe 2 recruiting processes, and I don't think we talked about Ktor really. Isn't it better for UI sharing to bring everything into pure Compose multi-platform instead of using Kobweb maybe in the future? Yeah, so there are a lot of disadvantages, I think. The Compose for web, using WebAssembly, doesn't have that native of a feel. You can really notice it's not a standard website. For example, here I cannot select the text, like at all. Maybe it's possible, maybe I just screwed up something, but you can really feel it's not natural. Maybe even like scrolling and all that is, it's visible that it's something else. But sure, it could be a lot better, maybe for some yeah, I forgot to say it. From prototypes, yeah. Which third-party libraries can I use with Kotlin.js? What are the limitations? Currently, there's not much documentation for Compose HTML, and I've seen some libraries specific to Compose HTML or even to Kobweb on the the new page with Kotlin libraries. I'm not sure it's called now, but there's a page where you can search libraries, and there are a lot of those. And for Kotlin JS specifically, I think a lot of the libraries are supported. For example, Ktor itself, it is running in the web browser in the front end. So Ktor does support Kotlin JS. Then maybe I can name settings from Rushwolf, I think it's called. Yeah, multi-platform settings. That one is also supported in Kotlin JS. And then there is Firebase from GitLive. Firebase multi-platform, I think, and that one is also supported in Kotlin JS. I think it has some future, but I'm not sure. What are the limitations right now. Yeah. What would you consider to be the main advantage of this approach, using the same language for front end and back end, over using different technologies for each? Well, I think the biggest advantage for this approach is that you can share a lot of code between front end and back end, and it basically makes the classes same, so you don't run to issues where the definition could be understood differently by the backend team or the front end team. So you don't really have to write some open API specification, because basically it's already in the already shared in the data classes. Did you encounter any issues with this technology during development of Sentieri? I don't really think so. There were no major issues during the development. Maybe the fact that Kobweb is not yet stable and it's rolling out a lot of updates, so maybe a lot of changes to the code could be needed. It wasn't in my case, but after I picked it up after a few months, there was a lot of changes I needed to do to update the library. So it hasn't reached the stable API level. But other than that, I think Kotlin JS works really, really well. How do those multi-platform libraries work? What is their format? Where are they hosted? Well, the format for running the Compose HTML, it is exported into Webpack, which maybe if you're a website developer, you know. But it's basically a package that is uploaded to the web browser, and then it's not a jar, it's a Webpack. I don't know what to say about it more. And for Compose WebAssembly, it uses WebAssembly executable, so that is also distributed via the web browser. And then the format for exporting applications in desktop is standard jar format. And they are hosted, well, I'm not sure, but probably Maven. It's standard, like, Gradle stuff. What current limitations of Kotlin WASM? I think the technology is still in alpha, so there could be some API breaking changes. I'm really not sure about the limitations, though. I haven't probably poked around that much with Kotlin WebAssembly. I only really started to explore it during making this presentation, but I've mainly used Kotlin JS for the website. So, do you have experimentation experience recommendations with using AI agents like Copilot Cursor when working on the code base as a full stack engineer? No, I don't use AI. Are you trying to share data between backend and frontend with Kotlin Flow? No, I have not. I've not tried that yet, but I've seen that Kobweb has some functionalities if you use their backend service, where you can. I don't know if it's Flow, but there's some kind of flow-like communication between those, and Kobweb also uses. Ktor also supports WebSockets and other kind of methods where you can communicate in a flow way. Is there a particular reason why to use Compose instead of Vaadin? I'm not sure what is Vaadin.
It jump off from. Is it the same thing perspective, but you it's already you jump on, but really it's also automated office and a little longer. What will you really need as to basically saying to this?
I don't think I'm experienced enough to answer that because I have not tried Vaadin, but I would choose Compose because it is the de facto standard for developing Android applications, and at least from my perspective, it's more used than Vaadin. Did you experience any performance drawbacks on iOS when using KMP? I haven't tried Compose on iOS in these projects, but in Métis we are actively working with KMP on iOS, and I'm happy to report that there are no performance drawbacks, or at least not noticeable ones. And even when using Compose on iOS, it really can be super smooth and not noticeable to a normal user. You have to be cautious about some different platform-specific looks, but all those problems can be solved, and using Compose on iOS is a joy. Have you tried React or other mainstream frameworks with Kotlin.js? No, I have not. I've not explored that path. Thank you.